Society of the Snow is the new film from director J.A. Bayona, and for anyone who's familiar with the 90s film Alive, it tells the same story of this flight to Chile from Uruguay of a rugby team that didn't make it. It crashed into the Andes. When it went down, basically these guys were out trying to survive for weeks on end in the middle of the harshest conditions. As I say, there's already been a film made about it, one that was quite fairly acclaimed, I think, back when it came out. And yeah, this is a retelling of it. It's on Netflix, and all I can say is, if you've got Netflix, get your ass onto this film. Start watching it right now. I liked Alive, back when it came out. Not as in, oh, haha, that's a faring romp. I love that. No, it was a hard film to watch, but it pales in comparison to what Bayona has done with that story here. What he's done here is pay it the absolute utmost respect. He had contact with the families of the deceased and of the survivors, and he clearly, the team around this film have done their research. They've looked into the lives of these people. They've honoured them. That can go one of two ways, don't get me wrong. Sometimes, people are honoured in a way that is almost sycophantic, where you don't see the flaws. For example, I recently watched The Great Ziegfeld. So that was about this man, Ziegfeld. Won Best Picture. It was a terrible film. And one of the things that made it terrible is that they never dug into this guy's flaws. He never felt like a person. All of his best bits were put on show because everyone involved in the making of the film knew him and wanted to respect him, this, that and the other. Bayona isn't interested in that. He's interested in the reality of what these men went through. And irrespective of whether some of these guys had opinions you may not agree with, or, in their private lives may have did things you didn't agree with, the fact of the matter is, once they are caught in this situation, they have to rely entirely on each other to get them out of it and to survive as best they can. And that's really what the film is about. In the harshest of circumstances, in suffering, that's when our utmost humanity is revealed. In comfort, you don't get to see what we're capable of. In comfort, you don't get to see the best of ourselves. Now, in suffering, you do get to see the worst of ourselves, but in suffering, you also get to see the best. You also get to see what it is that makes a society, hence the name of the film, Society of the Snow. It's in this extreme circumstance when some people are losing faith in God. Some people abandon God, which is a very real response to being in this kind of situation. There are conversations that are had between certain characters that make me deeply saddened. To hear somebody give up on their faith, to me that's an incredibly sad moment. But it's real. It's a reality. In the face of the worst kind of suffering, some people will lose their faith. That's just a fact of life. But then there are others who won't. There are others who actually it's in that suffering that makes them draw deeper into their faith. And all that is here, it's not one or the other. It's not, the film doesn't have an agenda to say, like faith is worthless because look at what happens when you suffer. It talks about that. It expresses that as a viewpoint, but it also expresses the other side, the good that can come from suffering. The fact that, without that suffering, there is no need for society to hold together in the way that it does. It's a very complex discussion that is had throughout the film, one that gets you thinking. Now, beyond that, it's not simply just people, talking about whether or not their faith matters and things. It's just the way in which Bayona films it puts you right in there with these guys. And again, my only comparison, because I've never lived this story, I've never crashed in a plane in the Andes. So the only thing I have to go on prior to this was that other film, Alive. And I feel like now, looking back, only through the lens of having seen this film, looking back at Alive now, it feels somewhat distasteful, shall we say, in certain elements. And I know there'll be fans of Alive out there, but please don't hear what I'm not saying. I liked Alive. I still like Alive. I thought it was a good film. But there are certain things about it that you don't see as a negative until you see it done in the right way. As I say, the camera work, extreme close-ups a lot of the time. I felt I was there. I've not felt this tense watching a movie for a long time. I've not felt this embittered about people's situations. And, you know, I've not been clinging to my seat with bated breath, just waiting to see what happens next, despite the fact that I know what was going to happen next. You know, this is a true story that's already been told. I know what was going to happen. So the fact that I was on the edge of my seat, the fact that I was really drawn in to these people, I felt for these people. When they're going through the pain, you feel like you're going through the pain. I couldn't recommend this film highly enough. Now, I have seen not all of this year's Best Picture nominees at the Oscars. Society of the Snow hasn't been nominated, basically. It's not been nominated for Best Picture. It should be. I can think of 2 films that were nominated for Best Picture that should be struck off before Society of the Snow. So if you haven't seen it, if it's not even on your radar, get it on your radar. Check it out. The score for this film should be nominated as well. It's got an absolutely beautiful score. Particularly towards the latter half of the film, there's some pieces of music there that just, yeah, are just beautiful, and just they make some of the moments transcendental. And I'm not the biggest Michael Giacchino fan. You know, a lot of people do rave about Giacchino's work, and you know, he's the heir apparent to John Williams and all that crap. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not seeing it myself for the most part. You know, I liked some of his score for The Batman, you know, huge Batman fan. But when you listen to that score in isolation, aside from a couple of tracks, the rest of it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's not that great. Here, I felt that he hit all the right notes. You know, it moved me in the way that it should move me, and then I listened to it outside of the film on its own as a separate entity, and it still moves me. It's a real standout score. Check it out. It's on Netflix. It's absolutely brilliant. I came out of it feeling wrecked. The film wrecked me. I got to the end and I just felt so emotionally drained. Society of the Snow on Netflix. If you've seen it, please let me know what you thought about it down below. Let me know how you feel it compares to Alive as well, if you've seen that film. Thank you for watching this review, and until next time, cracking.